Your tendons are awesome. We're completely surrounded by these events concerning our tendons, and while most of these are injuries through sport, some of them are actually in the form of success stories as well. So before you're looking at a screen like this, here are your tendons explained. Tendons are connective tissues that connect your muscle to bone. So if we take something like your quadriceps tendon crossing over your patella, it inserts onto the tibia, the actual bone of your lower leg. Every tendon has two ends, one side that connects to the muscle that's more pliable, and the other end that connects to the bone that's a bit more stiff. Now, contrary to how a lot of people outside of human physiology think about tendons, there are not hard lines where your muscle ends and the tendon begins, and likewise with the bone. Instead, we have this blending and overlapping of cells from your bones, your tendons, your muscles, that progressively get feathered in with one another until one becomes more dominant over the other in a given area. The tendons themselves are comprised of rope-like collagen fibers that distribute force. Different training states of your tendons can accentuate the ability of these rope-like fibers to either glide against one another or form cross-link bridges, which help increase tendon stiffness and the potential for stored kinetic energy. Let's go ahead and use a visualization tactic. We'll pretend that these two pencils are individual collagen fibers sliding nicely against one another. Now, as I just mentioned, high jerk or ballistic movements increase cross-linkages between these fibers, shown here by the rubber band. As I now tug against them, they don't slide as far, and they have a stronger elastic rebound back, meaning they're more stiff, but they can rebound more energy as well. Long-duration isometric or eccentric exercises breaks those collagen cross-linkages, resulting in the fibers being more likely to slide against another. It's really common in athletics to hear coaches and athletes alike talk about the necessity for tendon stiffness. And as I just talked about before, increased tendon stiffness can help store more kinetic energy in the tendons and increase performance. So based off of that, we would think that everyone would want to have stiffer and stiffer tendons, right? Well, the answer is not quite so easy as that. Let's go ahead and plot tendon stiffness and tendon pliability on two sides of a scale. Tendon stiffness would be associated with an increase in cross-linkages and an increase in potential performance, whereas tendon pliability will decrease the amount of cross-links and increase injury resilience. Now that you understand that stiffness and pliability are on two opposite ends, you can see that as we increase stiffness and potentially performance, we also decrease the amount of resilience in that tendon, perhaps placing ourselves at greater risk of injury. Now, when the strength of a tendon exceeds that of a muscle, you're at more risk of a muscle-based injury. Think about a sprinter straining the muscle of the hamstrings. On the other end of the spectrum, when the strength of the muscle exceeds the strength of the tendon, you're at more risk of a tendinous injury. Think about it being more common for bodybuilders to tear tendons rather than muscles during injury. And so where does this leave you as either the coach or the athlete with how you regard your training to tendon-based concepts? This really depends on the individual situation of the athlete. Let's look at two different sport applications of how to use this tendon training. First, we'll look at track and field, a sport with a long season, a few major competitions, and where winning and losing is separated by either millimeters or milliseconds. Now, this might be a scenario where it's worth it to dance the line of having stiffer tendons to try and edge out the performance at different points during your competitive season. On the other end of the spectrum, we can look at a sport like basketball, where there's a high frequency of games over a long season. You're also jumping a lot during basketball games, so you're already getting stiffer tendons due to that. I would argue that it's more important to actually decrease tendon stiffness for these athletes to keep them more injury resilient and on the court for longer amounts of time. It doesn't as much matter if you jump a quarter inch higher than a competitor, as long as you are able to stay playing for more of the season. Regardless of whether you're an athlete, a coach, or just curious, thank you for watching this video, and take care to write down any comments or questions that you have down below. Have a good one.